Hey everybody, as requested, this is my Spider-Man Easter egg video. Just careful for spoilers if you haven't seen it yet. Let's keep doing the ticket giveaway at least through the end of this week, and then we'll change it to something else. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber, leave a comment on this video. Let's see if I can do this in under 10 minutes. But the first big Easter egg is they obviously used the 1960s TV theme and weave it into the beginning of the movie. They introduced Damage Control to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That's just a cleanup crew. It was a comic book created by Dwayne McDuffie, may he rest in peace. He was also the creator of the Static character, so a lot of you might remember him more for that stuff. But in the comics, Damage Control was a joint venture from people like the Kingpin and Tony Stark to clean up New York City. It was mostly localized to New York, just because so many of the classic adventures took place around that area. But then there's the big Howard Stark cameo in Peter's school. The symbol of the atom is the same symbol that you see in Iron Man 2 when Tony is looking at all this Stark Expo stuff. So I wouldn't be surprised if Howard Stark or the Stark Foundation or his family were big benefactors for a lot of the schools in town. You even see them drive by Flushing Meadows Park, which is where the Stark Expo took place way back during the original Captain America movie and then in present day during Iron Man 2. They've since confirmed that the little kid with the Iron Man mask is now Peter Parker, so that might have something to do with the 8 years later, so that it would make sense that he was 7 years old in this. There's so many people wondering about that 8 years, I just did a video about it, so I'll link that at the end of this. But beyond the Civil War footage, there is a brief Bruce Banner cameo. He's up in Peter's classroom here, so there's just a lot of famous scientists that people revere that they celebrate in this school because it's a science and tech school. There's even Abraham Erskine in there too. He was the doctor that created the super soldier serum. Peter's locker combination, 1184, November 1984, was the release of the comic where Peter Parker takes his symbiote costume after he's come back to Earth to the Baxter Building, and Mr. Fantastic reveals that it's not just a costume, it's actually a symbiote. I think that was issue number 258, so big Venom issue. I know everybody's wondering about what they're going to do with the Venom symbiote when the Venom movie comes out next year. We'll hear more about that at Comic-Con probably. There were a bunch of comic book characters that didn't seem like comic book characters in the movie. Cindy Moon, who is the Silk character, was a big person. Ned Leeds, who became Hobgoblin. Flash Thompson was kind of controversial because he doesn't look like the Flash Thompson of the comics. Pretty sure he's never gonna become Venom Space Knight, but the actor who plays him is totally down for it. So because these kids are so young, it just seems like if they're actually gonna do some of the Spider-Verse characters, that'll be something that Sony does in 10 years down the road with different actors. Big one at the end of the movie though was the Michelle MJ character. So obviously you probably heard now, I've talked about it in a couple other videos. She's an original character that they're calling MJ because her full name is Michelle Jones. So the way Kevin Feige is explaining it is that she's just a twist on a classic comic book dynamic with Peter Parker. Mary Jane, very big love interest, but they wanted to do something different with that dynamic. They didn't want to recycle the character again, so it implies a lot about where they're going to take that character in the future. But obviously, she's nothing like comic book Mary Jane, so if it really bothers you, just think of her as Michelle, don't worry about it. The book that she's reading here in this scene, Human Bondage, isn't about bondage at all. The Easter egg is more of a metaphor for Peter Parker's story. It's about an orphan boy that goes to live with his aunt and uncle and has these grand aspirations, but finds himself drawn to more mundane things like getting married, having children. So that's just like Peter Parker. He wants to be Spider-Man. He goes to live with his aunt and uncle, but then he meets people like Mary Jane. He wants to get married, have children with them. So it's this push-pull between being Spider-Man and being Peter Parker. You probably recognize Martin Starr. All of his scenes got a bunch of laughs in my theater. But he also starred in The Incredible Hulk working with Bruce Banner. Just like Jennifer Connelly, the voice of Peter's suit AI, the suit lady Karen, who was Betty Ross and Ang Lee's Hulk, so you have a lot of Hulk crossover with the movie in a really meta way. The wife of Jarvis in real life is the voice of Spider-Man's AI, so it sounds like she'll actually come back for the next film too. So way more Hulk crossover than you ever thought. Maybe we'll get actual Hulk in the next film. The Stan Lee cameo was great. He wasn't talking about any comic book stuff. Marjorie, how's your mother doing? Just a random guy in Queens yelling at people to be quiet. The bank holdup, though, where they're all wearing the Avengers mask, is right out of the comics. It was in Ultimate Spider-Man number 42. That's another Bendis comic. Bendis actually got a special shout out during the movie because there's so much Ultimate Spider-Man in this too. Just like Ned Leeds is basically the Genki character, you have Miles Morales, which was another huge Easter egg. You have his uncle the Prowler, which was basically the back door to Miles Morales. I have a nephew in this neighborhood. When he's trying to get information out of him about the weapons fairy, you notice his license plate says USCM-01. That's Ultimate Spider-Man 1, the first issue that referenced Miles Morales. The other license plate on the fairy in the background here, SM20563, was the first appearance of the Vulture where he and Spider-Man fought. They're right on the cover here. So a lot of license plate Easter eggs. There's all those badass Avengers weapons that Tony's working on at the end of the movie they're loading onto the plane. Thor's magic belt, which I think is pronounced Megan Yord, I'm probably doing it wrong, but it basically makes him twice as strong as he normally is. So Thor's already super strong even without the hammer. He puts the belt on, he gets crazy OP. So because we're heading into Infinity War, you hear he's making a prototype for Cap's new shield. It's basically them teasing that Tony Stark is beefing up the Avengers in anticipation of Thanos coming. So the prototype for Cap's new shield could just be a regular new vibranium shield, or it could be more modular. On Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Clark Gregg has been using Cap's energy shield, which is right out of the comics. But there's all kinds of villains that pop up. You have the Mac Gargan Scorpion that shows up. He even has a scorpion tattoo on his neck. You have two versions of the Shocker. The first version isn't from the comics, but the Bokeem Woodbine version, where the Vulture says, "You're the Shocker now," and throws him the gauntlet, he's Herman Schultz. He's the original Shocker. In the gauntlet that they use is actually repurposed from Crossbone's gauntlet back during Civil War that he lays Cap out with. So there's a bunch of Easter eggs in all the stuff that they steal and repurpose into new weapons. The Sub-Ultron arm, when Peter's on the back of that truck, there's even a tentacle that looks like it belonged to Dr. Octopus back from the Tobey Maguire era. And then when he's pulling stuff out of the bag, he pulls an Ultron head out with red eyes, implying that it's still alive. So it's just a funny way to invoke big things from previous Marvel movies. But there's a Howling Commando that's principal of Peter's school, so a lot of you probably noticed that this character was the same person that showed up during the original Captain America movie, but it's just the same actor, he's not playing the same character. There was that huge dig at the original Spider-Man kiss, "Kiss her, Peter, now's your moment," before they pull it right out from under him. Lots of jokes about the previous Spider-Man films, including The Amazing Spider-Man, where Flash is driving up with his date saying that Branzino wasn't fresh. That's a reference to the fish dinner that Spider-Man was eating at Gwen Stacy's house during Amazing Spider-Man. A lot of you said that you love that Spider-Man moment where he lifts the debris off his head. That's right out of Jack Kirby, Amazing Spider-Man number 33. It's literally a reference to that. There were a whole bunch of funny t-shirts that Peter wore during the film. Iron Man even wore a cat on his t-shirt, but at the end of the movie where he goes to the Avengers building and sees the new spider suit, he's wearing the same t-shirt that Pepper Potts was wearing during Iron Man 3 when she was in bed with Tony, which of course we know after that moment she pops out and says, "Where's the kid? The people are ready. We need to think of something." The ring that Happy's had in his pocket since 2008 is just a reference to the OG Marvel Cinematic Universe team, basically the three people that set it off. So this was the beginning of the Marvel Universe. They're mostly making a joke about their original work on that first Iron Man film, which is really touching. You hear them talk about how special that was and how big a risk it was for Marvel and how big everything's got since then, how far they've come. It's amazing. The post-credit scenes, the Iron Spider suit, all that stuff I've done videos about, so I'll link that at the end of this. But those were most of the big comic book Easter eggs in the film. There were a lot of other references that I've talked about in other videos that I don't quite consider Easter eggs, but if you spotted any that I didn't mention in the video, just write them below in the comments. What's going to happen is there'll be some new DC coming later today, but if there are any other Marvel videos that you guys want me to do before Comic-Con, just let me know in the comments. There's going to be a 2-hour Marvel panel, so there's going to be a whole bunch of special Marvel stuff at Comic-Con. Congratulations to the latest giveaway winner, Eric Perez. Please private message me on the back end of my channel so I can get your contact details. While you wait for everything, you can click here for my post-credits video, and you can click here for my breakdown of the timeline error that 8 years later at the beginning of the movie. Thank you so much for watching. Everybody stay awesome. I'll see you guys tonight.